Hi everyone, so here's the video about how to upgrade your 2010 and 12 Mac Pro, the 5.1, 5.1, the old trash can. Well, you can grab one fairly cheap from eBay, and all the parts you would need to upgrade the CPU and the memory, and also you can get a lot of graphics card upgrade for this particular model, but I'm not gonna include that because everybody have a different need. Someone needs GeForce video card, someone needs AMD video card. At this point of time it is better to have an AMD video card because the metal support is 100% with AMD's video cards only. Apple and Nvidia has some kind of beef for years now, and they cut off the driver support actually in Mojave already, so no matter how you want to circumvent it and download the WebDriver, which worked so far, it's not gonna work anymore in Mojave, especially from the latest revision of Mojave. And Catalina, forget about it. There is no hardware support, which means your graphics card gonna work if it has metal support, but it's not gonna give you the hardware acceleration which you would need to do practically anything on your Mac. So as you can see, I took out the CPU tray and started to unscrew the heat sinks in a crisscross pattern. It helps not to break the pins underneath the CPU, and also it releases gradually the tension over the CPU socket, and then you can just place the heatsink right next to the tray and remove the other tray, the other heatsink. The CPU I'm using is the Xeon X5690. That's the fastest CPU you can get. Also you can get it from eBay, and you need two of them. If you would like to upgrade the single tray CPU board, single tray Mac Pro, then you wanna need the W3960. One thing you have to make sure to have another computer, preferably a Dell and HP workstation, to test the CPU, because there are many sketchy sellers. I have a couple of stories what kind of CPUs I got from eBay. For example, at some point I was able to buy a X5960 which was actually got its heat spreader, the metal part on the top, replaced, and it was actually just a 5520 CPU, but I obviously noticed it in my workstation's BIOS that it's a different CPU, so they can change the lid. There can be memory channel faults, so some of the memory modules not gonna work, for example. Yeah, I'm showing the thread locker. This is not for this upgrade. This is for the 2009 Mac Pro. Also this plier is for the 2009 Mac Pro upgrade, which I'm gonna make a video about it later. So back to the CPU. You can have a lot of faulty CPU from eBay, so make sure you have a unit in which you can test it, because in the Mac Pro you can also test it, but the Mac Pro is much less forgiving with faulty hardware. Same goes with the memory. I just showed you is the DDR3 fastest memory, the 1333 megahertz ones, the 10600R modules. They work just fine. Make sure you test those as well before you use them. A faulty memory can be a real headache after you booting up your Mac Pro. Also I'm using these fast state cleaning cloths to clean off the parts, which you're gonna see which parts I'm cleaning and why it is important. I'm gonna explain. Also this thermal paste, the Arctic Silver 5, it worked out for me just fine, and it's still one of the best thermal pastes on the market. And yeah, there is a USB drive ready with High Sierra, which I suggest to have the latest revision, because that's the last revision which works 100% with all graphics cards like GeForces and AMD cards. After that, in Mojave you lose support for the NVIDIA cards, so I'm not installing Mojave anymore on these old units. Yeah, what I would suggest when you disassemble the unit, take every part and clean them, because obviously if you leave dust, that can cause connection issues in between the parts, and you don't want that to diagnose dust particles, because it is really hard to find out. So as you can see, I'm using my usual duster, electric one, which is quite efficient. It's not like the canned compressed air. And well, just go through all the parts, the CPU sockets, the memory slots, and just blow all the dust out of it. You can see I'm taking it really everywhere off the board, so I'm making sure there will be no connection issue. Also the same goes with the heatsinks, I suggest. And also then you're gonna see, although the video is not that great, when I'm cleaning, dusting out the Mac Pro's case actually, and also there are some connectors there which you have to make sure it is dust free. Yeah, going back, so I already described the memory and also described the CPU type. Just make sure you test those before you use those. Also you can install any SATA 2 or later SSDs for the best performance, or for even better performance and some additional cost, like you can install a PCI Express card and an NVMe SSD on it, and that can be used as a boot drive from High Sierra and above, which is giving you not much options, but at least it works. And if you have an AMD card, it's gonna work in Mojave as well. So those are the upgrades. Obviously the GCX 680, which I would suggest to use, because that's the main 100% supported Apple GTX NVIDIA card, the last one. And maybe the 7750 or the 7770 cards are a good choice from AMD side. Well, I never tried those. And obviously the original graphics cards are just fine as well, if you are not heavily rely on graphics intensive tasks like music editor or something like that. Yeah, I'm just cleaning the chassis. I'm trying to clean out all the PCI Express slots as well as the connectors, like the CPU board connector on the bottom. And also I'm gonna take out the DVD drive and blow out the dust behind the DVD drive through the power supply, so making sure there are no dust mites and dust particles in the PSU, at least as much as I can with this dust blower. Yeah, it is nice to have a clean unit to work on. So the other thing you can upgrade, as you can see, the DVD tray actually have 2 slots in it, and you can buy quite cheap these extender frames for SSD, so you can install one more SSD under the DVD drive. Yeah, this is the part when I'm cleaning the PSU, and then all the connectors again, because the PSU has a lot of dust usually and it trickles down to the lower parts of the unit. So yeah, these would be the upgrades I would suggest. You can buy those obviously cheaper on eBay used, run some tests in another unit and then install them just to make sure they are working. And then obviously, as I mentioned, I'm using these alcoholic wipes, which dries fast, to clean off every crucial parts, which includes the CPU trays and the CPUs themselves. Obviously the CPU pins can be a little bit, not rusty, but corroded or something like that, some residue from previous use. It is advisable to clean it. Also the top part, the heat spreader, the metallic part where you can see the made and the name and the model number of the CPU, to make sure there are no dust particles when you apply the thermal paste. Same goes with the small metallic thermal resistors on the CPU board, which you want to see soon, because those get dusty, and if they not connecting properly with the heatsink, then it can misread the thermals and your unit can spin the ventilators faster. So these are the thermal detection units, thermal resistors. And then the other side obviously has to be cleaned, because you have two CPUs. If you have just the one CPU tray, then you have to do this only one. And also the same goes with the heat sinks. There are the part which has a thermal pad, which one is going to connect with these thermal resistors, and making sure that the ventilator is gonna blow on an RPM, on a speed which is sufficient to cool down the CPU. So clean this one as well before you use it, and obviously you need to clean out the residue of the previous thermal paste and apply a new one. You're gonna see I'm using it and how much I'm using it out of the thermal paste. In this case you don't need to do much more in terms of preparation, because unlike the 2009 model, you can fit everything just right back, because you have the CPU retainer bracket, while the 2009 model has not come with such things. So with the 2009 model, which I'm gonna make a video about, you need to prepare the heatsink, ventilators and the connectors of those, and also the socket itself. There you're gonna need to use the screw fixing liquid, which I showed previously, but not with this one. You can use it, but it doesn't really matter, because the retainer brackets and the screws are made in a way so you can fully screw back the heatsink and it's gonna hold itself properly. You can also clean the old CPUs. It depends what old CPU you got with the unit. If it's a 6 core, you might be able to sell it, but if it's under that, you probably can just bin it, because it's worth nothing. It costs more to send it with Royal Mail, for example, than the whole unit cost. I mean the whole CPU. So it doesn't really worth to keep it. But I just clean it and probably dump it in the end. I believe this unit was a simple quad core, the basic setup, and I upgraded it to the highest level, which is obviously the dual 6 core CPU, the 3.46 GHz Xeons, the X5690s. Also, you might consider to clean the gloves after you use these dirty components, and obviously there might be some residue of the old thermal paste left on your fingers. You don't want that to spread all around the parts you're gonna use. Now you're gonna apply as much thermal paste as you wish, but I'm usually using this amount because that's just enough, and I'm gonna spread it evenly on the surfaces of the CPU. Some of the people who are upgrading these not using the same technique, there is not much you need to put on the heatsink, on it, just a little bit, because when you spread the thermal paste on the CPU before you install it, it's gonna make sure you don't have to worry about too much thermal paste staying on one spot of the CPU and applying too much pressure on the CPU socket, which can cause a lot of trouble for you. I mean, the worst case scenario is that it can bend your pin or break it or short circuit it. Least problematic is if there are too much of the thermal paste on one spot. It can pressure that part of the CPU socket, and you can lose some of the memory channels, and you might end up thinking, oh my god, my memory is wrong or my CPU is wrong. Obviously, if you did test the parts as I suggested before, then you can narrow it down quite easily. What is the problem? It can be like that, like if you apply too much thermal paste and you didn't spread it like I did, you might having too much pressure on the CPU socket. So, but let's hope that's not gonna happen with you. So yeah, that's why you're spreading the thermal paste evenly as much as you can on the CPU, as you can see in the video. And then you can just check there are no dust particles there. Check your CPU's bottom, there are no thermal paste residue which might get on the bottom of the CPU when you spread the thermal paste, and then just install it like that. It's really easy. And again, you can always check your glows, because as you can see there are some thermal paste residue already on it, although I just cleaned it. But I'm just spreading the thermal paste on the other CPU, and after that I'm just going to clean my glows again, just making sure not leaving any residue in between connectors of the CPU. And it is generally not a good idea having thermal paste anywhere else than the top of the CPU. Then you check the other socket, obviously no dust in the socket. You check the CPU's bottom, it is clean, and just fit it like you can see on the video. And then you just align the ventilator connector, the little black connector on the top of the heatsink, with the socket. Align it, place it back to the table, and then just use the T-shape tool to screw it back in a crisscross pattern, obviously to apply pressure evenly on each side. And you can rotate it like 5 times first and then apply the rest in a crisscross pattern. I would suggest to avoid any issues. And you can screw it back all the way till it hits the end, but don't force it. When it hits the end, just stop there. If you feel you over tightened it, you just rotate a little bit back and then tighten it again, but just when you reach the end, you stop there. That's more than enough. Because of the screws design, they're gonna apply enough pressure if you not over tighten them. The same goes with the other heatsink, crisscross pattern, obviously. But with the other socket, I suggest to rotate the CPU board first and then align the little black connector with the socket on the board, which provides the power and data for the ventilator. When you align it, rotate it back and follow the same crisscross pattern to tighten the screws, and do not over tighten them as I suggested before. What I didn't mention so far, you need a T-shape and a really long, like 9-inch long Allen wrench, which has a hex 3 end to unscrew all the screws and screw them back. The short one is not gonna work, and it makes your life much easier to have this T-shape. Also, when you would like to upgrade a 2009 unit, when you have to actually count the rotations, so that's why I'm using T-shape, which I'm gonna leave a link, something similar in the video description and for all the parts you saw in the video, where you can find it. Obviously, if you embark in this mission to upgrade your Mac Pro, make sure you test the parts, and yeah, make sure you have all the tools before you start to do it, and make sure you are confident to do these upgrades by yourself. Obviously, the memory modules, lining up with the memory slots and pressing on both sides evenly till it clicks, and installing all 8 modules, which in this particular unit going to give you 128 gigs of memory, which is quite great. And that's why still many uses these old Mac Pros, because you can go up to 12 core 3.46 gigahertz and some 128 gigs of memory. So practically you can match the specification of a trash can, and still you have a lot of option to upgrade this unit way further than a trash can. On the screen you can see the result. It's quite great, and also you can see some Geekbench 3, the registered version, and 64-bit test. It does quite similar to the Trashcan 12 core. The only difference now, at this point of time when this video was created, that the Trashcan still supports fully Catalina and Mojave latest version, while this old 5.1 2010 or 12 or even the 9 after upgrade only supports High Sierra latest revision. I hope you, well, not enjoyed it, but learned a lot. Review the video as much as you need before you do your upgrade. Recorded it as it happens, so you can guess how long does it take to upgrade these Mac Pros. And see you in the next video.